So let's just assume we're still talking to the person who's early in their career. They're trying to get started. Um, Agency versus in-house, and then the follow-up to that. I guess we can make this a two-parter. Reporting to somebody with deep subject matter expert or expertise in SEO versus the SEO aware but not subject matter expert marketing manager. Maybe if everyone share, how did you start, and thoughts on both of those pieces.
I started agency side. I majored in English literature, writing, communications, and had a minor in psychology. So I was like, writing for marketing is the perfect like combination of everything. So I got in as like an everything writer at a very small agency. So I wrote social media and websites and anything that had words. And then quickly figured out if I wanted to drive more traffic to what I was writing, I needed to figure out the SEO side of things. So I think I've heard many people say that if agency is really, especially if you have a really great agency that you're working with, agency is one of the best ways to start your career because you get exposed to all different kinds of situations, all different kinds of companies, you have different clients, and you can grow fairly quickly depending on the agency and the structure within it. In that agency setting as an SEO or search marketer. I think when I chat with people about it, I always think of like depth versus breadth. So a lot of times agency marketers have the breadth to, I've worked with all these different industries. I've worked with all different types of clients. I've learned the communication skills. I've problem solved for, all these different variables that I've come across. And so you can gather up those skills. And then I think a lot of people in SEO, once they get that agency experience, maybe they hop around to a couple organizations, they will go in-house for the depth. So you focus on one website or one product or just, a few, and within that niche, you're in a single industry. You really get to know your competitors and you really understand how, the website works and all the marketing products involved and the different departments. So like, especially if you're in tech, you'll have to work with the sales team, you'll have to work with the product team, you'll have to work with engineering and all that stuff. So it's really just the breadth versus depth sort of thing I felt. I know people who have started in-house and they have caught up to the same speed, but I think based on the small sample size of people I've talked to, the majority of people I've spoken with start agency side and then either go in-house or start their own businesses.
100%.
I mean, I've done it all, right? I did in-house, I did agency, I did consultant, and now I'm back in-house. And it's funny because if you'd asked me a year ago or 2 years ago if I'd ever work in-house again, I would have said absolutely not. But the reason I made that decision was because I have an amazing team to work with. And I think that if you can find a spot where you really, really enjoy your colleagues and feel like everybody brings a lot of value to the table, it doesn't matter whether you're agency or in-house. Or consulting if you have a great, team of support people that you work with. But I think that, one of the things that is really consistent in our industry, and I'm going to kind of jump ahead to one of these questions in the chat, is that a lot of people feel strongly that, you should do agency or you should do in-house, and that experience in one is not applicable to the other. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous, precisely for the reason that Carolyn brought up, which is like the breadth of opportunity versus the depth of opportunity. And then to go back to your original question, Matthew, I would suggest that if you are new to SEO, you join a team, whether it's agency or in-house, where there are other strong SEOs in the company. whether that's your boss or not, because that's going to be your biggest opportunity to learn, is that hands-on day-to-day work. And if you're the only SEO in the company and you don't know your stuff already, you're not going to know what you're not doing and what you're missing.
You might become very effective within that marketing organization, but will you be like an incredible SEO practitioner? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I have a very specific point of view here, and I've never been in an agency unless you count what I'm doing my own for the last few years. And I think that it depends on what you want your career to be. If you are at an agency, then you're definitely going to learn a lot of SEO. And like the people, the agency folks I've seen, they get to touch a lot of stuff and learn a lot very quickly and see a lot of different companies. But within your career, so you may be an SEO expert, within your career, you are going to cap out. So your choices will either be make your own agency or become a VP at that agency. And the only way you can earn more is if you're taking a piece of that pie. Whereas if you're in a company, all the time we see people that started in SEO and are now C-suite. So I don't know if anybody knows, like Alex Schultz, he's the CMO of Facebook. I met him years and years ago at PubCon conference, and his title was SEO manager at Facebook. So you're only going to really get that sort of exposure to go deep within a company and deep within the corporate world if you're in-house. So I would say, like, yes, maybe get your start in an agency and then leverage that as quickly as possible if you like SEO to get within a company, because then once you cap out in SEO, there are other places to go, right? And that's one of the biggest problems I see in our industry, which is there are no VPs of SEO. There are very few even directors of SEO. It becomes like the SEO person, the senior SEO manager, ends up reporting to a director of marketing or director of growth, who reports up to a CMO or a CPO, chief product officer. So that's my view, and that's the way my career went. And the reason I am consulting is because I ran into that same ceiling myself, where like I really liked SEO, but there wasn't anywhere within SEO I could go within in-house. It would have to be somewhere else in marketing or somewhere else in product.
I'm going to disagree with that just a little bit. I'm not disagreeing with the idea of it, for sure. But I am going to point out that not everybody wants to be C-suite, So like, if you really just like doing SEO and you want to continue doing SEO, then you can do that. And I mean, I think that I'm a testament to that, because like I owned my own company for 11 years, and now like I think my title is like SEO manager. I'm third from the top from the CEO, but I don't care what my title is, because it means I just get to do SEO. I just get to do what I love. And I don't want to manage people. I don't want, some big reporting structure. As long as I'm getting paid what I feel like I'm worth, then I'm happy. And there's nothing wrong with that if you are that way.
Most important part is
not everybody can be a leader.
I think too, like, because this conversation is relevant to me because I was agency for like 8.5 years, and then more recently went in-house, and am excited to like explore that side of things a bit more. And I'm sure it's different in different organizations, but I think from like a career pathing perspective too, for me personally, starting an agency was great, because then I had a boss who knew more than I did. And once I got to a place in the company where I was leading the team and the product largely, and didn't have another person who I could ask, and I started turning to like outside groups, I needed to prove to myself that I was still like relevant within the industry itself, and ended up changing jobs largely because of that. But another thing that I discovered was, generally speaking, over the last 2 years or so, you can make more money for lower titles in-house than you can agency side, generally speaking. And I think it's a company structure thing. And I say that because, that was a huge surprise to me. I went from like a senior director title to a senior manager title, and had like a 20% pay increase, like negotiations started there, and could partially be because I hadn't negotiated well enough before. But from a career perspective, like take that into consideration early on, and know, like, do I want to move in-house, which might come with certain volatility as well, right? Whereas agency jobs can be a bit more stable in the sense that you may not experience like layoffs and things like that. as you might with like a really fast moving startup. But you can get, for like an SEO manager, senior SEO manager role, that can be something where you can get paid substantially more in my experience doing in-house. So if that's your objective and your goal is like, I want to be like making relatively good money long-term and just like doing the actual nitty gritty and like getting my hands dirty in the work, in-house is a great thing to aim for, even if it feels like a step down from like a title perspective. And if a recruiter tells you that your agency experience is not valid, then they are not the company you want to work for, because SEO is SEO. Like, none of the companies that I've talked to over the past, 6 months and 2 years, over three, like I have changed jobs 3 times over COVID. None of them have ever turned me down because of agency experience. And as they, and they shouldn't, right? Like that didn't enter the conversation, because SEO is going to be SEO regardless of where you are. I have been turned down because I didn't have e-com experience or didn't have experience in the right like verticals and industries, and that might be more relevant, but that probably comes from a fundamental like lack of understanding. And I would maybe graciously try to help them understand and be like, hey, like on agency side, one of the things I've realized is I want to spend more, even if I only have 5 clients, like that's 20% of my time. I want 100% of my time. And there's so much that I'm not able to do for my clients now that like I could do for you. So, maybe helping them understand that could be one response. And maybe they just don't understand, which in the long run, like, will they value your work as an SEO if they don't think the agency will translate? But yeah.
And I would just say that recruiter's probably not very plugged into what's going on right now, because as a result of the Great Resignation and so many people deciding to go work for themselves, SEOs are in really high demand right now. I mean, you ought to be able to pick where you want to work and pick your salary within reason, because they need us.